Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Post-Conference Presser for Anfield Index. Ahead of a massive weekend, you might have been me, like watching a bit of the golf. Hopefully Europe absolutely do over the US in the Ryder Cup. But sporting-wise, Saturday, 3 o'clock, which, let's be honest, we don't say Saturday, 3 o'clock too often because of all the TV changes and different bits, do we? But that is when Liverpool will play Crystal Palace in just under 24 hours' time. Selhurst Park, a tough game coming up. I'm your host, Dave Davis, coming to you from the lights are drawing in Edinburgh. It isn't the warmest anymore, but it's nearly October, people. So what do you expect, in all honesty? So as ever, with any episode of Post-Conference Presser, we'll go through the normal. We'll go through the questions that Arne Slot was asked, the answers that he gave, and the players he talked about. Some positive, but some heartbreaking at the same time, it's fair to say. We'll look at the clues from the game the other night. Maybe some were clutching at, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Crystal Palace and the threats they bring. And unfortunately, they got a double boost from Oliver Glasner in their press conference, Palace fans, didn't they? This will not be an easy game at all. And of course, we'll talk about the predicted lineup, the score, and the scorers. Plenty to go through, people. So we'll get stuck into it as ever. Plenty Arne Slot was asked in that short period. Plenty that he gave in response as well. And let's get the sad bit out of the way. First of all, he did confirm that it is an ACL tear, isn't it, for Giovanni Leone, and he will be out for approximately a year, in the words of Arne Slot. So that was the kind of spear to the guts, wasn't it, a little bit? We knew it'd be bad and we expected, but it's still different to hear it said. But I suppose you could argue that we knew it was coming. So we were a bit naturally down as soon as we heard that bit. This doesn't change the picture, but he did just discuss a little bit more about the Champions League squad. So let's hear what he said about that.
I think you mentioned at the start about Federico Chiesa possibly coming into the Champions League squad. Is that something you have looked into and started that process perhaps?
Yeah, we've looked into this. I don't know. I cannot tell you exactly where that process is at the moment. Do you know?
Not sure.
You're not sure as well. So that is not something I do myself. There are other people doing this. But if I'm informed correctly, if a player has a longer than 2-month injury, you are able to replace him.
Arne Slot, you are indeed informed completely correctly, because that press conference quarter to 10, this morning, and a few hours ago, it was ratified. There he is. Federico Chiesa has been added to Liverpool's Champions League squad. And for as bad as we feel naturally, and it's right to, about Leone, there's just something about Chiesa this season, isn't it? It just feels different. It just feels like by even being added to this squad, he will just have a part to play in the whole thing. That's honestly how it seems to me. And especially in Europe, when he was first told that he wasn't going to be in it and he gave that interview, he said all the right things, didn't he? About, I want to fight, I know what it is. And now that he's in it, it's just even more wind in his sails, especially after the game the other night, which we'll talk about. So, yeah, sad news about Leone, but bit of a smile that Federico Chiesa has been added to this squad. Spoke about, the other night, didn't I, and the victory. Hugo Ekitike was also mentioned because I'm sure you clocked it. There'd been a report going around, hadn't there, that he was set to lose a bit of his pay, docked a few weeks' wages, old school style, because of the double yellow card, the shirt off celebration. Arne Slot was asked about that, and he was pretty honest about it.
Discipline means that I spoke to him, then it's discipline, but I don't think that is discipline. So discipline means a fine, and that he didn't get. So it wasn't very smart what he did. What he recognized himself immediately, straight away. So he said sorry straight away to his teammates. players of all ages do make mistakes, and that's what he did in this situation as well. But we all make mistakes, and you're allowed at this club to make a mistake without immediately getting fines or these kind of things. He's a fantastic human being.
Bit different from the other night when Arne Slot agreed with the journo that, called it stupid was stupid. But I like what he's done there. Kind of smile, and it kind of puts one journo in the mud a little bit, doesn't it, in all honesty? But maybe that's for a different discussion. But with this, like the way he almost defended Ekitike, and he's right. The way he says, what one mistake doesn't define him at all. We know, well, we knew another striker that made quite a few of them, didn't they? He always got the back in at the same time. So this will quickly be forgotten, result pending on Saturday. But there you go. No fine for Hugo Ekitike whatsoever. But with Ekitike being suspended, naturally, the first question was going to be about Alexander Isak and him playing it. And he was really straight with this. In fact, maybe more of a clue than he normally gives Arne Slot. Asked about Isak and is he ready to start? 90 minutes might be a bit too much for him, but it depends on the pace and the intensity of the game. Ladies and gents, I think that's as close as you're going to get to him saying Isak's my starting 9 in this one. I'm going to make my pickers easy later on. But yeah, there was a bit of positive, I thought, around that as well. He was asked about Rio Ngamoa. Remember, he signed a deal, 17 years old, a 3-year contract, which is the longest he can sign at that age. But asked about, with him being his new contract, him starting to see him more, is he ready? And he was honest and said, the good thing is, if you're a youngster at Liverpool, there are players in your position who are better than you. So there are still steps to make. He wants to improve, but if he plays with Mo, Cody, Federico, he feels there are steps to make to their level. And if he is at their level, then it's consistency. That is the most difficult thing. And of course it is, because I kind of saw some, not many, it's not like, major thing, but just a few comments about his performance the other night. Kid's 17 years old. The very definition of a 17-year-old footballer is the performance is just going in a curve, isn't it? So, of course, there's going to be games where he maybe doesn't quite hit his straps. Learning games for him more than anything. It can't all be last-minute screamers at St. James's Park for 3 points, can it? That's just happened to be a special occasion, as it were. But I think he is ready in the sense of you will see him get minutes this season. How many? Maybe that is a completely different question. But aside from talking about Crystal Palace and Arne Slot doing that, which we'll come on to, those were the main questions. Those were the answers that he gave in this one. And I'll keep Rio Ngamoa on the screen when I talk about Southampton clues, looking at the last game that we played. There were a few from this. I suppose the biggest clue is when Ekitike takes his shirt off for the second yellow, Alexander Isak or someone else is going to be starting at the number 9 position against Crystal Palace. That was one clue, no doubt. Good, just as a reminder that I liked his finish. I liked his finish an awful lot, Isak. The game wasn't about him. That half wasn't about him at all. But I liked Alexander Isak's finish. Other things that we learned. There's a few disappointed, didn't they? They weren't. It's not just good or bad because we're not 12. But Frimpong, a lot of misplaced passes. Same for Joe Gomez. In fact, up until Leone's injury, and he was brilliant, by the way, absolutely brilliant up until then. If someone had told you to observe it and gone, which one's the experienced centre-half, you would not have been looking at Joe Gomez. Endo, stinker as well. In fact, he gets the assist for the Southampton equaliser, doesn't he? So there's quite a few that you can maybe argue didn't seize their opportunity, would be the learning from that. But in terms of the ultimate learning, this boy, unbelievable. And just the more and more you see him, the more and more you start to think, like, why isn't Chiesa getting more minutes? Because he gets 2 assists in this game. And obviously the second one's brilliant. The first one's hard work and, smart anyway. Should have had 4 assists. Isak should stick it in, shouldn't he? in the very first minute of the game. Ekitike in the 77th minute heads it wide, has a disallowed goal, connects brilliantly with that volley, which is a great block from the Southampton defender. A brilliant performance from Chiesa, and important to say as well, across the attacking line. That one that Ekitike misses in the 77th minute is a great cross from the left. Let's have a note about that for later as well. But even the assist, the second one, is cutting in from the left, isn't it? And laying it across. Unbelievable he was in this one. Yes, it's Southampton. Yes, it's the Carabao Cup. Yes, you are going to be telling me, well, Minamino and people like that were brilliant in the Carabao Cup, and look how that worked out. But Chiesa's got serious pedigree, and I was well impressed with his performance. And then it wasn't even a tough decision to name him man of the match in this one, was it? An easy decision all round. Well, you quickly move on. Carabao is right at the bottom of the list of priorities. And we move on to a tough game, this, people. 5th place in the table, Crystal Palace, away at Selhurst Park. It's a great atmosphere, and there are noisy fans. I wish someone had knocked that fucker out with a drum, because that's annoying. But just they do build an atmosphere and get it going. You look at them so far in the league. Played 5, 2 wins, which doesn't sound great, but importantly, 3 draws, 0 defeats. Look at that. Equal best defence in the league. Only shipped 2 in 5 games. But at the same time, not big scorers, are they? Only put 6 in the back of the net in 5 games. So probably indicates it's going to be quite a low-scoring game, a tight one in this one, which will feed into my prediction as well. But Arne Slot was asked, of course, about Crystal Palace, and he was more than respectful, I would say, in the answer that he gave.
I think they haven't lost 17 games in a row now, and he's part of that team. So difficult team to beat, but we are also a difficult team to beat, as we've shown when we played against each other, because we've beaten them once with 1-0, and twice it was a draw. And we have more than enough options to replace, if needed, a player at the centre-back position, because, of course, we've got Virgil, Joe and Ibu, and other options if needed.
Which, hopefully they won't be. I'm going to be completely honest about that. But naturally, that discussion was around Mark Gay, because it does feel a bit like the Mark Gay derby tomorrow, doesn't it, with everything that happened in the summer. But important to note, as Arne Slot mentioned there, 17 games unbeaten. Feels like we're playing Crystal Palace forever, doesn't it? Last game of the last season and the title win, that draw. The Community Shield, the first real game, you probably say, of this season. Got them in the 4th round of the Carabao, haven't we? And this weekend. Just like can't escape Crystal Palace, it seems, that way. Hopefully the relationship gets a bit better, because obviously lost the Community Shield, not that it's important, on penalties, but let's make no mistake about it. This is an uber tough game. And in terms of their squad, we've got some news that we didn't want, I suppose you would say, in that Oliver Glasner confirmed today, Yeremy Pino is fit for them. Annoying. Ismaila Sarr is fit for them. That same Ismaila Sarr that's, won the penalty, scored a goal in the Community Shield, or just seems to almost turn into his international teammate, prime Sadio Mane, doesn't he, when he plays against us, annoyingly. So, Mateta, he brings a threat at the same time as well. This is going to be a far from easy game. But who is going to line up for us? I think some things are easy and some things I'm swithering on, and some things are going to happen that I don't want to, but I think will. Alisson will, of course, be back in goals. Mamardashvili did nothing wrong, but it's Alisson back in goals for this. Of course, they were given the night off, and Virgil and Ibu straight back in there, joined by Milos Kerkez on the left-hand side. And, Frimpong did nothing to wrestle the shirt off him, did he? So it's Connor Bradley on the right. I could be wrong, but you bet strong money on that back five, wouldn't you? It's when you come into the middle, it gets more complicated. Now, in simple terms, Ryan Gravenberch's going to be in there. He's the first name on the team sheet in the midfield right now. And for me, again, I wouldn't do this. But I think it's going to be a combination of Dominic Szoboszlai making up the double pivot and Florian Wirtz, the number 10. That's what he would go, or what I think he will go for tomorrow. Just to be crystal clear, if it was me, you'd be looking at that original midfield three from last season, as in Grav, Mac, Szoboszlai. That would be the three I would stick in there. Probably Szoboszlai more at the 8, McAllister a bit higher up, a bit like we saw in the interchangeable 6 system against Everton. That is what I would do personally. But I think it'll be Gravenberch, Szoboszlai and Wirtz. That's what my gut's telling me. The forward line, well, I said, I think Alexander Isak will start on this one. Right down the middle. Mo's, of course, going to be on the right. And I think it's going to be Cody Gakpo on the left. So Gakpo, Isak and Salah, that is the forward line for tomorrow. Again, it would not be what I would want to do. If you gave me the choice, it would be Wirtz on the left, Isak down the middle, and Mo Salah on the right. That would be my deliberate choice. And part of that, I've got to be honest, and you can call this too harsh, but it's just what I'm observing at the moment. Since the opening day of the season, and even the second game where he gets 2 assists against Newcastle, not really proper assists, are they? Because Ekitike's finishing to the bottom corner and Gravenberch's long ranger. But since that first game of the season, it's been pretty poor, I've got to be honest, from Cody Gakpo. I've not really seen him offer anything in an attacking sense. Very little. I'm not saying he doesn't work hard, but a defensive sense, that's if for being a defender is your best attribute for the winger, then you're an Arsenal player, of course. But it's not what we ask of our forward line, is it? It's just not been a good start to the season for Cody Gakpo. And I think in last season, if he was playing like this, Luis Diaz would be in the team, end of story, and he'd be coming off the bench, where I think he should, but he won't be utilised tomorrow. So there you go. That is what I think Arne Slot will pick. Alisson, Kirkez, Van Dijk, Konate, Bradley, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, Wirtz, Gakpo, Isak, Salah, even though it's not what I would do. That is what I think that lineup will be. Feel free to chuck your comments in. Share your thoughts, ladies and gents. You might not be having it, but that is what I believe it will be. Which brings us to the very last question, doesn't it? Scorers. Now, this is balanced by the fact Liverpool are the top scorers in the league, and Crystal Palace have got the joint best defence in the Premier League at the moment as well. So it's hard to predict a little bit. Bonkers LFC there going 4-3-3, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, McAllister, Salah, Isak, Wirtz. Exactly as I would, Bonkers. I would love it to be the case, but I don't think it will be. I actually think a little bit like last season. Do you remember when we played them last season? It was tight, but we deserved it. And, rest in peace. Diogo Jota slotted the winner from a Cody Gakpo assist. I can't get it out my head. And even my heart's telling me this. 1-0. 1-0 to us, Mo Salah or Alexander Isak to get it. At the same time, and you can call me doubly optimistic, but it's just want to see what my heart and my head are telling me. This will be a tough game. A draw would not surprise me at all. I know it's what David Lynch was leaning towards a little bit when we were talking about it on Media Matters earlier in the week. This is a really good Palace side on a run of form. The only thing that's annoyed me is because they're in the conference and not the Europa, they didn't play on Thursday night. which they would have done if Forest hadn't have cried like little girls about that and, pushed to get them demoted. So that would have tested their squad. But there you go, 1-0, Salah or Isak to be the scorer. That is what I'm going for, ladies and gents. We can all talk about, other teams have got tough games and blah, blah, blah. This does feel like a huge week coming up, doesn't it? Palace away, Istanbul, Galatasaray away in the Champions League, with Chelsea a week tomorrow at Stamford Bridge. I think by the end of these 3 games, they're not trying to be too dramatic here, but, that things happen. We'll have a good idea of certain things, I think, won't we? Because then it will be the international break. Freaking international breaks. But hey-ho. We will see what happens. Less than 24 hours. The Reds, the travelling cop, visit Selhurst Park. Saturday, the 27th of September, 3 o'clock. Fingers crossed for that one. But until then, that was another post-conference presser for Anfield Index.